That was very intense. And what is the process? Or like, what is the how?
Yeah, it's complicated and slow going. I obviously am biased towards RG Check and its uniqueness and its coverage, but
That's fine. It's part of the package.
you can't always consult and collaborate with your regulator. That's just not it's not set up that way. But you can with iGaming Ontario. That is their function. That is their role. You have obligations in the commercial agreement with them, but their ability to help you in the market, that is part of their job. Mobilization, right? They're funding a lot of great research, and can we showcase some of it at our Discovery Conference? Can we be part of events to activate and roll that out and get the word out about the research and the evidence base and make it applicable, right? Like in terms of the variety of audiences we have at RGC and the various different groups that come into our tent, can we translate and mobilize the research in ways that can be broader applied and used?
That's brilliant. Enough of chit chat. Tracy, thank you very much for agreeing to have a conversation with me. I am happy that we managed to do it on your home soil.
Here we are in Toronto.
Here in Toronto.
Yeah.
Exciting. And I wanted to start by focusing on what you do. So you act as a Senior Vice President for Accreditation, Advisory. One more word is there.
Insights.
Yeah. Right. For Responsible Gambling Council. What do you do? I mean, it's a very soundy title.
Yeah, you like it? It's a new title, so I've had it for about a year now. And I was with RGC though for about 5 or 6. But I lead the RG Check accreditation team, so that's a team of about 12 or 13 of us. And then there's advisory services that is a whole host of different fee-for-service work with industry and regulators. And then the Insights is our research team. A small but mighty group there that does some interesting work on what's what.
How does it look in practice? What's the interesting work?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I fit within RGC as an organization is particularly interesting. Our work across those 3 teams is very international. We certainly do a lot of work here in Ontario and across Canada, but accreditation is available globally. Advisory services clients are all over the world, and the research that we're doing, as well as I do, that the research space is incredibly international too. So that's very interesting to me. And most of the work I do and the team does is with industry and with regulators. And so affecting change in that space is what we do. So a lot of the accreditation piece is really straightforward. Advisory services is quite diverse in regards to work we do on employee training, player education, policy, strategy development, a whole host of different sort of projects and pieces there.
And who are your customers? Casinos?
Casinos, regulators, a variety, big operators, little operators, land-based operators, iGaming operators, pubs and clubs. Pubs and clubs in Australia. So a wide variety of suppliers, game manufacturers.
Okay, and you mentioned RG Check. Where does this fit into this mix? Because I understand that RG Check is an accreditation, right?
Yeah.
For online operators?
And land-based. So it was originally developed over a decade ago for land-based. And land-based of a relatively largish size, 100 games plus. And so we've been doing that in Ontario, across Canada, Australia, the Philippines, Cyprus. We've done accreditations in Macau. So a whole host of land-based accreditations there. We had a unique set of standards and criteria and an accreditation for iGaming. And we did a few of those, but in the last, 3 years, 5 years, we've done many, many more of those as the market's grown for that in particular. Yeah.
What do you mean market grown? Like, where does RG Check sits now
Yeah.
within that space of online?
And so in Ontario specifically, it is a requirement for all online operators that are regulated in the Ontario market. And so we have over 50 operators representing over 80 sites.
Okay.
And so all of them are required to have RG Check.
Right. So in order to get a license, you need to get an RG Check. What does RG Check consist of? What are you doing? Are you doing like an audit?
We do. It's exactly like an audit. And so there are we look anything you consider as an RG program element is incorporated into the audit. So we look at sort of standard things you'd expect to see around employee training, self-exclusion, player education. We look at how, like, the foundation of the RG program around policy, strategies, and culture. We look at how it's informed through stakeholder engagement and research. We look at how it's integrated into systems that the operator has, like payments, marketing, site and product design, venue design, those kinds of things. So it's a 8 standard areas for land-based, 9 for iGaming. And then the process is about 4 to 5 months from very beginning to very end. And we do documentation collection, but we do player surveys, employee interviews. We do site testing for online, for venue. We go to the venue and we do front of house, back of house tours. So we see where the materials are. We interview the employees. That's when, for land-based, where we survey employees when we go to the venue as well. So
that's interesting. I cannot think about other jurisdiction where this would be a requirement in order to get a license.
Not yet. Working on it.
Okay. So if I would ask you, like, is there any equivalent to it? Is there a none? Nothing? Like zero?
There is. I obviously am biased towards RG Check and its uniqueness and its coverage, but
it's fine. It's part of the package.
There were NCPG in the U.S. has an ICAP accreditation for iGaming operators. ROGA is also working on with us on a certification for their members,
right?
For online. Their GamCare in the UK had a similar setup. Exactly. Yeah.
But for none of you have mentioned it is a regulatory requirement.
Not a
or voluntarily, right?
Yeah, so we do. So as a requirement in Ontario, so we work with those operators for their sites that are operated in Ontario. And so the one thing about RG Check is it is specific to the site. So we don't accredit Entain. We accredit Party Poker, Party Sports, Party Casino, right? Like we accredit the very .on, the very specific site. Because of the games we test, the employees that we interview, the players that we survey are specific to that that site. But what we do see in some jurisdictions is the requirement for an independent third-party assessment. It doesn't have, which is a good idea. And that's what we would encourage any jurisdiction to include. And that is a complement to it's an RG Check, even in the jurisdictions that we do work in, doesn't replace policy or regulatory enforcement, but it works in partnership with that. It gives them a lot of information. They get our reports whenever they would ask for them, and they can see what we looked at. They can prioritize their own maybe audit in that way, go deeper in some areas that may have been, where we may have raised questions. It can work in partnership that way.
Right. So it sounds, especially because you do that internationally, it sounds like it generates profit, right? It's a for-profit activity.
Yes.
But Responsible Gambling Council is not only a commercial company.
No, we are a not-for-profit. Yeah.
So, okay, now we've considered and talked about your department, basically. That's just a piece from what RGC is. So what else is RGC?
Yeah, well, a lot else. And this is why I think the organization is so interesting, is because it does combine work with all sides around the issue. And so we do this work on accreditation and advisory services with industry and with regulators, looking to influence policy in that way. But then we do a whole host of public-facing work as well, and work directly with players. So we have a whole 100+ staff that work inside casinos at PlaySmart centers in Ontario, resource centers for players. So that's a very big piece of what we do. And then the preventions team does a whole host of work in schools and universities with different ethnocultural communities, developing broad public awareness campaigns around risks and signs, but also targeted work with parents, caregivers, youth, young adults, and that kind of thing too. So that's a big part of it to make sure we're getting sort of the full coverage around the issue.
Right. So now we have the full picture about the RGC, and now how it fits into the structure of Ontario jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So there are two, in my view, there are two other main organizations. One is iGaming Ontario, and the other one is Ontario Gaming Commission. Is that the name of
Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario?
Right, Alcohol and Gaming Commission. Alcohol goes with gaming, right?
Yeah.
So how these are those three organizations? Would you consider those the three pillars of the regulated jurisdiction of Ontario, and how they work together?
Yeah. The other one I would add in there is OLG.
OLG.
Yeah.
OLG is an operator, isn't it?
OLG is they are an operator. They operate the lottery. They operate an online site, olg.ca, and they are also the conduct and manage entity for land-based casino.
All right. In other words, sort of like a regulator for land-based?
So, Canada is unique from other places in that, as in our criminal code, gambling is illegal unless it is conducted and managed by the province. And so we have these conduct and manage entities as well as regulated. So that's the AGCO is the regulator. Every province has a regulator. Every country, right, has a regulator. So you are licensed by the regulator, and they develop regulations and they enforce those regulations, and you need to comply with those regulations to stay in the market. And that's where the fines come from. And so that's very AGCO, very straightforward. And then you have the operators. And some of them are crowns. Some of those are government operators. Some of them are private operators.
All right.
And then you have an entity like IGO or like OLG for land-based. Yeah.
So do I understand it correctly that IGO, aka iGaming Ontario, is the online equivalent of what OLG does for land-based?
Yes.
All right. Fine.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
But OLG also does lottery and their own iGaming site.
Yes.
Yeah, sort of, a few different roles there. Yeah.
All right. So, okay, I am fine. Let's focus on the online market a bit more.
Okay. Yeah.
So you've said that it is illegal unless it's legal in the province, and that is being conducted by a specific organization, which for online here in Ontario is iGaming Ontario. What do they do? What is the difference between them and the regulator?
Yeah. So they're not a regulator. They have a commercial contract with the operators. So they manage the market. They do reporting, revenue collection, any contractual obligation over and above or in addition to the regulations is managed by IGO Ontario.
All right.
Yeah. So in most jurisdictions, that is incorporated into a ministry, right? And here they report to a different ministry than the regulator, and a provincial ministry, but it is an agency of that ministry.
The reason why I'm probing so
Yeah.
much with this, it's from my perspective, and I'm hearing it a lot from other people. I would say the general consensus is that the Ontario did it right. I mean, you have a pretty solid generalization rates. There are not that many issues that I would see, like conflicts between the operators and the regulators, bad public image. I would say that it runs quite smooth. Would you agree with me?
I do. Yeah. And we've heard the same feedback and from operators themselves and from players. Um, I think the conduct and manage entity there does play an interesting role in a sounding board for the operators, or a that's different than the regulator, right?
Yes.
Because the regulator, but I dare say the AGCO too is very consultative, is very responsive, and I think more than other regulators are typically known to be.
Right.
So there's that. They've gone into that relationship in a very consultative way, but the way you can't always consult and collaborate with your regulator. That's just not
You cannot.
it's not
Yes.
set up that way. But you can with iGaming Ontario. That is their function. That is their role. You have obligations in the commercial agreement with them, but their ability to help you in the market, that is part of their job.
That's interesting.
Mm.
Again, the reason why I'm probing so much is because just recently I was recording a podcast about that as well. It was in Czech Republic. Czech Republic, they have a similar but different model, but a model that seems to be working as well compared with other jurisdiction, because their channelization rates are not that high, but what is most significant about them is that the self-regulation works there pretty much.
Okay.
A lot of stuff which is now part of the regulation
Yeah.
has come as a initiative from their association of operators,
Okay.
which is not a regular association of operators.
Right.
That's the thing and I'm trying to compare these two
Yeah.
models, because iGaming Ontario,
Yeah.
no operators included, right? It's just like a middle person between the operators and the regulator.
I wouldn't know if they're not in the middle, more like an arc.
Arc. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there is the Canadian Gaming Association, right? We do have an industry association that works, that is the lobbyist for the industry, which is an important role that they play. But again, iGaming Ontario is it's in service of not a particular operator or single operator, but and it also has an RG mandate, right? Like a player protection mandate baked into it as well. And they have certain obligations. And that's where the obligation for RG Check comes, is from that contractual obligation. It's not a regulatory requirement. And so they're looking at the market as a whole and making sure that it's healthy. Yeah.
Right. The thing that sets the Czech association, it's called an institute. They are now transferring it to other countries, to Slovakia and Poland. What the main thing that is different is, it consists from the operators. It is being funded by the operators,
Right.
but it has all other stakeholders that are important in order to running the regulated market effectively.
Yeah.
So they have researchers, they have therapists, they have people who deal with lived experience.
Right.
And the thing, the secret sauce of this, of the case of Ontario and of the case Czech Republic and the structure over here, I see the secret source is trust. Because what they were able to achieve is that these parties trust each other more, and they are able to sit behind the one table and have a discussion.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that? That's the case with Ontario as well?
Well, I think that there is just an openness and a transparency that builds the trust that you're talking about. But I think that a collaborative spirit is probably part of the common thread there.
I am impressed by that, because both systems, because it works.
Yeah.
If you compare it with other jurisdiction where it is obvious that these stakeholders are more quite often even against each other, and there is a lack of trust.
Yeah.
They cannot really agree, like, okay, this is required by the market, but this is required by the regulator. Let's meet
Yeah.
somewhere, so we would make an environment which is sustainable for all parties.
That open to compromise, and being heard.
Indeed.
Yeah. I think it's probably rare in the
Yeah.
industry. Yeah.
But at least there are case studies like this
Yeah.
that can be used as an inspiration for.
But I find that that example around all sides being involved, right?
Mhm.
Like, because then I think when that is then uh, extracted, or the impact of that is extracted into the marketplace, it's more sustainable because the other voices have been incorporated into it from the start, right? So I think that makes it a lot stronger in its
Yeah.
diversity of voice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also find it sometimes difficult to achieve, especially when you already have some sort of an environment.
Yeah.
It's difficult just to, clear the table and start all over again.
Yeah.
So I think it's important at the beginning where these things are forming to grab it from the right part of the stick and to pull it like this.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting topics, going quite deep with that. Let's take a step back. I like to do this when we do this conversation and to focus a little bit more on yourself. So, Responsible Gambling Council, accreditation, RG check. How did you appear in this mix?
Okay. Before RGC, I was with OLG for several years. But before that, not in gaming at all. But always in the space around businesses' impact on society, around community involvement or corporate social responsibility. And so in other types of issues, on the retail side or financial services, consumer products, the issues around sustainability or corporate social responsibility, in a whole different. I've consulted, I've taught, I've done a whole host of in-house type of work. And then, about 10 years ago, I got into gaming. It is a very dynamic space, as you well know. I've appreciated the global scope at RGC. I've appreciated at RGC in particular the not-for-profit focus, being a values-based organization. I think the size of the organization allows us to be very nimble. I think the perspectives that RGC is able to incorporate gives us a lot of strength in terms of the impact we can have on all the different sides and sources. But yeah, so that has remained interesting to me. But I did my undergrad in public administration. I did my MBA here in Toronto.
MBA from social responsibility, right?
Yes. Yeah, with a specialization, and that was a long time ago, and I'm not going to say how long, but before it was the trend it is now. It's not a trend, but it was early days.
So one of the questions that I've prepared was to ask you about what motivates you, but I think you have already answered it because it sounds like the values, the ability to create something that you see the impact of it, and that you're able to see that impact is positive.
Yeah, I would say all of those things. I think, being in a system that is global in scope and has the ability to and finding the points of leverage to change it is really interesting. I think as long as I'm learning something new and sharing that, it gets to the right, things move in the right direction. Connecting, like the way we work with the various different stakeholder groups, being able to connect, making connections is really important. Even in the work we do with industry, finding internal champions that we can empower with the right information and with the right tools and services and that kind of thing is also very motivating.
So it's not only motivation coming from external work achievements, but also within the organization. How are you able to leverage talent? How are you able to, I guess, get the best out of people and like the effective kind of work doing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's at the end of the day how change happens, right? You need, motivated people working in a system, right? So that combination of things, systematic structures that support the ideal that you're going for, and then people within it that are, activated and motivated to move and make that change.
Right. So now you are in gaming for more than 10 years?
Yeah, about.
I guess that it was not on your schedule when you were working around studying the social
No,
responsibility,
probably not.
how was your first impression? I mean, how you got,
Oh.
I mean, okay, what is the story how you got into gaming? Like you applied for OLG and seems like
Yeah.
I can do some change around
Well,
this.
yeah, I mean, and OLG was an interesting as a government operator. I was part of the social responsibility team at OLG. And so it was as a government operator, it was almost like a little not-for-profit within the organization, is how we functioned. And it was great because we worked in they have 4 lines of business around charitable gaming, bingo, land-based, lottery, and iGaming, and seeing similar issues that all organizations have in regards to the impact that they have on society and whether that's good or bad, and trying to mitigate that or leverage that. And OLG was great for that. I mean, they do a lot of work in community engagement. They do a lot of work in the host communities where they have casinos. That was always really interesting work. And then and I think it was the same way that if I think about all the different components of RG Check and the different standard areas, right? Like you need to be working on talking to players, talking to employees, making the systems, in the corporation. And those were all the levers that we had there at OLG. And so it was a dynamic enough space.
It almost sounds like that you never really had any doubts working in gambling industry, or did you?
I mean, the change is not constant or slow, and it's not linear, right? Like there's some really horrific stories about the impact that gambling has had on people's lives, and you've talked to many of them. And so that's always, no. So there's certainly doubts, and I'm not a gambler myself. So that always sometimes gives me pause in terms of trying to understand it from a gambler's perspective. I don't always have that.
Is it because you don't find it entertaining for yourself, or are there other reasons?
I guess so. I don't know. I've never really thought about why I don't find it appealing.
This question was not scripted.
I
I'm
know,
sorry
yeah.
for
Yeah.
throwing this onto you, but it seemed interesting to me to take a look at it because, I mean, it sounds like you've had a certain, I think it's not perhaps a mission, when someone focuses on social responsibility before working in gambling, so you never really thought about it. Fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, I've always liked the seemingly oxymoron nature of things. There was one point in my career, I was the executive director of the Canadian Centre for Ethics and Corporate Policy. People would talk about business ethics, and you'd get a smirk like that.
Right, yeah.
And in the same way, I'm sure when you talk about safer gambling or responsible gambling, people like just don't get the complexity, right. And so that has always been kind of interesting to me. Yeah, that complexity was. But gambling as an entertainment form, gambling as itself, I mean, I have learned not to stigmatize the activity because I know that is, really, really damaging. but it's still never been something that I've developed an appreciation for that habit itself.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
Let's focus on the bigger picture
Mhm.
and perhaps on the future.
Okay.
So what do you hope to achieve with your work?
I think it's a lot of what we've been talking about. I mean, and if I think about some specifics, I think it's about um getting more people into the fold, right? Like, so getting more operators doing RG check, getting more operators with, world-class training, really high-level player education materials and messaging and sourcing and doing excellent work, doing the work
Mhm.
we do, but doing it better and doing it in more places.
Mhm.
Um, and then bringing others into, right, like, is the problems that we're trying to solve with this work are very complex and need all of the different people
Mhm.
involved, and so getting all of them in the tent, and getting more of the different actors and stakeholders in the tent together.
Right. I wanted to make a little warm up for my next question. And I think it falls quite well together because even though I would say the main focus of RGC and yourself would be the Ontario jurisdiction, it goes beyond the borders.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me that it is not only about generating revenue from getting RG checks, but more about sharing the best practices and standards in order to make gambling even elsewhere a
Yeah.
bit more effective, a bit more sustainable,
Yeah.
which is moving me towards the recent announcement from RGC that has been out there that there is a cooperation between Responsible Gambling Council and the International Center for Responsible Gambling, right? Just like a month ago,
Yeah.
this was
ICRG.
released. And I understand that it is about combining the research capabilities of ICRG, right? And I'm missing the second part. Which capabilities exactly of the
Yeah.
RGC? Is that like implementing it within the RG check, make things better, spread it more around the world? If you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think two things. One is in terms of us, having sources of information that we can incorporate as evidence into our products and offerings, accreditation, et cetera. And the other is mobilization, right? They're funding a lot of great research. And can we showcase some of it at our Discovery Conference? Can we be part of events to activate
Right.
and roll that out and get the word out about the research and the evidence base
Mhm.
and make it applicable, right? Like in
Yes.
terms of the variety of audiences we have at RGC and the various different groups that come into our tent, can we translate and mobilize the research in ways that can be broader applied and used?
That's brilliant. I never really, I mean, I guess I thought about it,
Yeah.
but I did not grasp it like this when I was thinking about it. But it is an issue which I encounter quite often.
Right?
You do great research, but it stays
Yeah.
inside journals.
Yeah.
And
And it's a different skill set, right? Like researchers are very good at creating knowledge, right? But thinking about it and using it and applying it to different and we can use the same piece of research and it might mean different things to an operator or to a regulator or to a prevention agency. But being able to translate it and communicate it to different groups in that way I think a strength that RGC has in terms of our network.
very nice.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was not specific collaboration with ICRG, right? That's the acronym. But it was with Travis, who acts there. He's the director of research.
That's right.
Right. And
Yeah.
you two work together on the initiative, which is still ongoing, which is called Better Gambling
Yes.
Forum.
Right.
Can you explain to me what Better Gambling Forum is?
Yeah, so the Better Gambling Forum is another big tent initiative, I would say. And this time hoping to leverage the machine of the United Nations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what it seeks to do, it's a UN-affiliated initiative, which means we have audiences at different UN forums, G7, General Assembly, World Health Summit, in order to raise awareness around the issues around safer gambling, responsible gambling. And what the working group is endeavoring to do is to create a framework that will help different jurisdictions capture the different components of success, the different foundational sort of the building blocks that you need in a jurisdiction to build a healthy market. So what we were talking about before about that, the collaboration amongst the different groups, looking at the sort of building blocks, the foundational pieces that different aspects of society need. So for me, it's bringing together sort of the responsible gambling industry components as well as a public health focus, right? We know that when a jurisdiction expands into online gambling or sports betting or a new market, or even opens up a casino in a community, that the community needs to be prepared, right? Like that there needs to be some education and awareness around risks and signs. And that the treatment community needs to be prepared and activated in that way. There needs to be monitoring tools about how we're going to understand the impact that this is having on society and on the community.
Right.
And so it's ambitious, but what that is the goal of the Better Gambling Forum is to create that framework and describe that ecosystem of those sources for all of the different stakeholder groups.
All right. That was very intense. And what is the process? Or like, what is the how?
Yeah, it's complicated and slow going, I dare say. And so we've got a working group, a global working group. We've got but I mean, it's a group of really smart, well-intentioned people. There's a scientific advisory committee to make sure that this is anything that we're recommending is sound. But it's a working group such that people are working off of it on the side of their desk. There's no funding for this at this point in time. And so we've had a few key meetings. We have a consultation document coming out this spring that hopes to bring to gather, again, we're talking about, making sure that voices are heard and pulling that all together to get some feedback about what that structure should be. And hopefully along the way, we'll get some funding so that we can, spend a bit more time and resources behind that and creating that. But it's a group of really interesting people trying real hard.
So I've heard framework. I've heard building blocks, you said?
Yeah.
I did not hear the word standards. Was that intentional?
Oh, no, I didn't say because I think it's more there could be standards incorporated that. But more of an ecosystem or pillars, I'm thinking, and there might be the next layer like if a pillar is sort of community, there might be standards from there. Yeah.
But we are talking about global usage.
Yes.
Right?
Ideally, yeah.
So then different jurisdictions, different kind of structures can take it as a can we call it a roadmap, or basically as a this is like a navigation valve. This is what you can use for inspiration.
Yeah.
Do you have any ambition for this to be part of any regulation, or is it? I mean, where this stands in these efforts,
right?
Is it important for this work to be part of any regulation anywhere? Like,
yeah, I mean, I think as if you were a legislator, right, and you were considering opening your market or expanding your market into sports betting, or if you were a community and you were considering opening a casino in your jurisdiction. I think it would give you a strategy. It would give you areas of that, tools that you would require operators to have.
Yeah.
Right. And you would need centralized self-exclusion. You would need, tools for players to use. You would need player education, but you would also need, community resources. You would need treatment resources. You would need preventions program. You would ideally have the financial sector engaged. And so it is bigger than just a set of standards that regulators would use, because I think those exist, right? Like we have,
Yes.
and we learn from each other's jurisdictions and all that kind of stuff. But I think this is more holistic.
Right. And I would say that it has the ability to be more specific than the regulatory requirements because they are not that deep.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Fine. Okay. Another announcement.
Yeah.
It's not specifically, I guess we can call it a collaboration, but basically RGC has joined the International Gambling Standardization Association.
That's right.
As one of the members within, there is a board,
an RG. We're not calling it an RG committee because that would
committee, not
no,
board.
because it can't be, because then the acronym would be RGC.
All right.
That's already taken.
No, that was taken.
And so maybe it's a council of responsible. I don't know. So what we're going to call it exactly is, but all that to say, it's early days with that group. There is a name for it. I just can't remember it at the point in time. But this is another opportunity to bring that organization, which is fundamentally game manufacturers, game suppliers, into the mix, right? We talk a lot about operators, and operators are player facing, and so they obviously have a very, very specific role. But the products that operators are providing are made, right, by the manufacturers and suppliers. And so that, to me, is a very interesting stakeholder group. And ways that, and so that's my aspiration for our work with IGSA.
Yes,
And
I am kind of glad that you have the same thing, because I'm bad with those acronyms. I need to look at my phone quite often to see like which one to use. But the interesting thing about the IGSI, sorry,
there's
right, A B C D E F G, is that it was established on the foundations, or basically aligning the technical requirement and things which are so it would be simple in different jurisdiction for those companies to make business over there, so they would follow this. So we can even say that it's like a very pragmatic kind of technical alignment. And now perhaps, I guess they were doing it before as well, but now it's building on those higher levels of standardization for...
Exactly. They have the expertise of developing standards, right? They've been developing technical standards, global technical standards for quite a long time. And so that consultation process to have something standardized and agreed upon, like that is what they do really, really well. And so if we can activate that system around some responsible gambling pieces that are harder potentially to define from a technical point of view, but would have that component to them, could be really interesting.
Okay, let's imagine that there would be an initiative of a similar initiative about standardization framework at different parts of the world. And I imagine, logically and naturally, it's difficult to include everyone when you are working on such a work and you are aiming for the global standard of it.
Right.
So I would say that it's sort of inevitable that there will be other initiatives in other parts of the world focusing on a similar thing, to be aligning on standards, aligning on the ways people and organizations do stuff. Do you find it negative? I mean, is it a bad thing that there might be development at different places, perhaps going to a different directions?
Um, yeah, you see that. And I think, though, we're sometimes relying on the same research,
Yeah.
right? Like the research that a regulation usually draws upon is quite global.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't, if in a specific jurisdiction, you'd be hoping for player-based research that would be based on your population.
Yeah.
Um, but for a lot of different things, especially if it's not player-based necessarily, the research is quite global in that
Mm-hmm.
way, right? And we can extract that from all kinds of other things. So I think that if you look at the sources of evidence for those standards, being quite a common pool,
Yes.
and then a regional customization, right? That needs to be there. I mean, we run into this with RG Check because we have common standards that we use all over the world. We use them in Australia and the Philippines and Cyprus and Canada and the UK. And you'd have a common principle, like we look for a dedicated area in a land-based casino for player education.
Right.
And that looks different in different, like, because there's sort of culturally, there's different types of help seeking culture. There's different levels of stigma with that, with the activity. There's, the distinction between problem gambling and safer gambling prevention can be blended, especially in venue. So that can show up quite differently in different jurisdictions. But the idea that there is a dedicated place for players to get help.
Right. So the principle
Yeah,
stays the same.
exactly.
And principle can travel, it can spill over, it can
Yeah.
go to different places, but you need to adjust the details based on local culture, customs, basically the ways
Yeah.
how people do stuff.
Right. Because it's the products are the same, right? Like an operator works globally.
Yes.
And so they, in the same way, where they might, use different skins in different jurisdictions, but the mechanics of the game are effectively the same. And so the types of information that players need are relatively the same because it's responding to that product. How a player is going, but we already know, even within a jurisdiction, that different players need different information at different times, right? Like the diversity of player education is immense, and so similar in other jurisdictions. The sophistication that we need to do that work, but we all need to understand how the games work, right? Like how we communicate how the games work will show up differently, but we need to communicate how the games work.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that. Because the reason why I'm asking it like this, it's that I'm a big fan of such work. Of I guess the word standardizing stuff is not the most popular.
Right.
That might be the reason why you didn't mention it that much, and I'm trying to supplement it with other synonyms as well. But yeah, doing framework. So we would have the same baseline, which works
Right.
around the world, and then you can build on it. But quite often I'm being asked whether it is needed. I mean, because ideally you should have jurisdictions where they are serving only their own players. So I can't even say like it's a homogeneous group of people, even though it isn't.
Right.
But people tend to ask about it. They tend to focus on that. And the challenge is, why do you need it? I mean, like these jurisdictions, they can do whatever they seem fit because it will be applied just for their customers, and eventually they will get used to it. But I don't think that it is the case. And the reason why I was kind of challenging it was to provide some sort of a reasoning behind that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, and so maybe principles. We can talk about the common principles as opposed to being, if standardized sounds we've stigmatized standards, but My problem with standards is been that is different, though, because I still have a problem with them sometimes, is that especially because then we need to meet the standards, we need to meet the regulation, and no one's innovating or trying to do something newer, right? Because there's so much focus on doing the requirements.
That's interesting angle.
Yeah. And so my challenge and what I spend some time thinking about is how can we raise the bar and have a bar effectively, just have a bar, but how can we keep raising the bar, and how do we incite people to go above and beyond? How do we give people space to be innovative in a regular, is when the amount of time and, compliance, the amount of time that's spent on compliance and the regulatory requirements, it's not where innovation comes, right? And so we need carrots and sticks in this game, right? And so if we're focused on the standards piece, and standards help raise the tide, and that's all great, but how do we keep the leaders leading? How do we innovate and motivate them and reward and recognize leaders to go above and beyond standards? That I think we need to do some work on in such a heavily regulated space. Where does innovation come from?
Right. So people wouldn't be just relying on this and saying this is prescriptive, I'm doing what they ask for. There is no need for me to go beyond it because
or I'm spending all my resources on this compliance stuff. I don't have the capacity to get ahead of this, or right? But when a group of industry comes together and self-regulates, that can be interesting and innovative.
Right. Fine. I was gonna ask what was one of the ways that you have thought out so far, but you've said
that's one.
You have said that. Okay. Let's talk about one more topic that we skipped that I've had there. What's next for Canada? Because Ontario is just one of 6-7 provinces.
Keep on going.
10 provinces. I'm so sorry. I mean, there are 10 provinces.
More provinces. And so
Canada is big.
It's really big.
Oh my God.
And Alberta is next. So Alberta is their market is scheduled to launch in July. And so that will be all kinds of interesting to see. So they have a similar model to Ontario, where they have we don't say IGO, we say, and we don't say it, we spell it AIGC, the Alberta Internet Gambling Council Commission, AIGC, is that conduct and manage entity. And so they've launched and are thriving, and market launches there in mid-July.
Mid-July.
Yeah.
So from what you're saying, it sounds like they will be following a similar structure.
Very similar. Yeah. And it's curious to see which operators in Ontario will register and be licensed in Alberta. It'll be then interesting to see if other provinces follow suit from there. Some have indicated that they will, some have indicated that they won't. The monopoly structure has its advantages. And so we'll see.
Okay. Exciting. I'm ashamed that I didn't know how many provinces are there. We talked about innovation.
Yeah.
What innovation, and I think we can conclude with this, what innovation you would like to see in years to come to keep online gambling, I mean, this our little gambling space, to see it on its feet, to be going forward?
From a systems point of view, if I keep on that theme, I think there's lots of innovations that we talk about in the space around customer interactions and customer support and all that kind of thing. And so I think that is a train, and we're on the train, and that's all great. From a systems point of view, the one actor that, especially in the Canadian context, that I'm interested in seeing more action from is the financial sector, from banks and credit unions. Australia, the UK has got some activity where banks are asking operator, like their clients who are operators, questions about their performance around safer gambling and AML and such from a risk perspective as an investment. But I think there's more that those institutions can do from a player-facing point of view as well, in terms of identifying harm, identifying financial vulnerability. That kind of work is really interesting to me when I think about the other actors in the system that can have an impact.
What about financial education?
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. Financial literacy for
Literacy, right.
yeah. In the same way that we talk a lot about gambling literacy, I think financial literacy is a very strong foundation there. That because it's interesting, right? When you think about gambling harm and the typography of harm, the different types of harm, familiar harm, psychology, like physical harm, but financial harm is quite specific to gambling as well when you think about other jurisdictions. And it manifests itself in all kinds of different ways. And so I think thinking about it as financial harm can give us all kinds of different interesting solutions that will pull us towards financial literacy. We'll ask starting our banking institutions, how much they know about this. We start asking the right type of questions if we think about it that way.
Bringing more stakeholders or more players into the mix to do it right.
I think so.
Okay. That sounds like a good message to end this with.
All right.
Oh, cool. Thank you very much, Tracy. It was a interesting discussion. I'm happy that we were able to talk about different topics, talk about how it looks like now within Ontario was the work of RGC. Really enjoyed it.
Me too.
So yeah, it was very nice.
Thanks, Mo.
Thank you.